everybody, it's Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to check out our Patreon to support the channel, get early access to our videos, or to join our Discord server. So today we are going to do a lyric breakdown and song analysis of Triumph, the full version from the RWBY Volume 5 soundtrack. This is just how I see all the lyrics and what they could be referencing. I don't think there's necessarily like a right or wrong answer here, but some of the lines do seem to directly reference events from the volume, and so that may have been more intentional for us to catch, but again, this is just kind of how I'm seeing all of the lyrics, and I kind of want to discuss with you guys and see what you guys think. So let's start with the opening lines. So back to the fairy tale, I think, is referring to just earlier lines of RWBY, such as Blake saying, like, this isn't a fairy tale, and the Volume 4 opening line of it used to feel like a fairy tale, right? So I think that possibly all of the lines, like, in this sort of area, like there's 3 backs and then a nowhere to go, so I think that all of them represent a different girl, and so RWBY, I think, could still see life as a fairy tale right now because of all, like, the magic going on. It's very, like, you know, magical, and that's kind of a staple of the fairy tales, you know what I'm saying? Weiss could be saying back to the show as a reference to both sort of, like, the show that she puts on for herself, you know, like, I guess the mask that she wears, so to speak, like, she's basically sort of putting on a performance, you know what I mean? Like, she abandons her house, she gets on the plane, you know what I mean? But it could also, like, it's sort of like a triple thing, because I think they mean back to the show in the most literal way of, like, RWBY, but they also mean, like, back to Weiss as in, like, it's sort of like she's always performing, because obviously we have seen her perform, quote-unquote, for her father before, for the banquet or whatever when she was singing. Back to the Wall, I think, could reference both Blake and Yang for both of their arcs, right? Back to the Wall and there's nowhere to go, right? Hopeless and Desperate, all passive verse. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but the paths part, I think, could be a reference to Yang's choice. Like, when, to the audience, it looked like she was deciding whether or not to go to Raven or RWBY, basically. Like, she was trying to choose between them, at least. That was, like, the red herring, sort of, that was thrown at the audience. But instead, she took the path to use Raven to get to RWBY. But whatever path that she took, it would still be adverse, right? Things looking bleak and they're bound to get worse, that's pretty self-explanatory again, like, they kind of did get worse. Like the first part, I think that the lines in this second part sort of represent a different girl. Hopeless and doomed and there's no way to win could be referencing Weiss and how, like, she left her father, so now she's helpless and alone. Doomed to being that Raven captured her and she can't win against Raven or Vernal, which I think Vernal kind of points out to her, like, hey, you're not getting out of here, not with me around. You know, she doesn't say it exactly like that, but that's sort of like, you know, what's going on in the scene where she's captured. Gold, unachievable, Faith running thin could reference Blake wanting to win against Adam and going against the White Fang, but the problem is that, again, part of this volume is that their goals are unachievable because they don't necessarily have enough proof to condemn Corsic and Finnick, right? And Faith running thin could be the faith of the fondness that she needs to believe in them. Lost and Forlorn, Impossible Odds is probably a reference to Yang, just because, like, she was basically in the middle of nowhere, so obviously lost, but Forlorn sort of means, like, lonely and abandoned, and both Raven and Blake abandoned her just at different times. That's when you'll learn you've been messing with gods is kind of a reference to Ruby and Juniper, obviously, because they did learn that they've been, you know, messing with the gods, as Crow tells them about the gods, and obviously Ozpin has been cursed by the gods, and that's what we find out in this volume. Send in Your Grim is probably a reference to Beacon. Tear Off Your Limb is a reference to Yang. I think it's Tear Off... Is it Tear Off Your Limb or is it Tear Off My Limb? I don't know why it's written as your, but again, all the lyrics on the RWBY page are fan transcribed, and so I guess it could just be whatever somebody, whatever someone heard, right? Which, I mean, that could possibly be right. That just doesn't seem to... it is my, okay. I just checked. But anyway, let's keep going. Strike Me with Bolts of Lightning, I Won't Die is probably referring to Nora, since, like, obviously Hazel tried to do that with his, dust thingy, but it wouldn't work on her. But I think that works for pretty much all the girls, because, like, it's sort of like, you know, do whatever you want to me, I won't die, right? And I think that's pretty, like, powerful for them. The battle seems unwinnable, but all we need's a miracle could probably reference Ozpin and the gods, since miracles are generally associated with gods and religion and all that stuff, right? And so the miracle could in turn be, like, you know, from the gods, or whatever you want to call it. We're Going Up Will Never Be Denied. This is kind of nerdy, but I feel like We're Going Up could be a reference to the Mistral elevator. And will never be denied is obviously, I think, a couple things. It's like, it's more of a like, we won't be denied our victory, right? I could also reference that Crow, like, requested to the council for the huntsman, and he, like, was really put, like, he'll never be denied in that regard too, like by the council, like, you know, fuck you, I'll do what I want sort of thing. Can't wish away the dismal days, can't bring back what is gone, won't waste more tears on yesteryears, instead will carry on. I think this could reference the Battle of Beacon and of course losing Pyrrha and the girls sort of losing each other along the way. Yesteryears, I had to, I looked it up just to make sure, but it's supposed to mean like remembering something nostalgic, so I think it could be sort of, won't waste more tears on yesteryears could be referring to tears wasted on remembering the past and all the good times that they had together. Instead, they'll carry on, right? We'll win for sure, we will endure, and though the goal is far, we'll be the ones to touch the sun and triumph will be ours. This seems pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. I'm not sure how the sun and later the sky metaphor works in everything here, but I think it's sort of coming into the light, which is sort of like a theme of some of the other songs. Like, touching the sun could be, like, in the sky and whatever. It could be, like, I guess, making a victory with the light instead of the darkness, you know what I mean? Or not falling into the dark, right? It continues. So that was basically what we knew from, like, the opening, but there's still more. Nowhere to Run Now could reference Blake, obviously, because she ran away. No Time to Grieve could reference Juniper, again, losing Pyrrha. No Other Choices could reference either Weiss or Yang. Like, Weiss didn't have any other choices but to leave how she left. Like, she took her best bets on the airship, even though clearly it was very dangerous. And Yang, like, again, like I talked about earlier, it seemed like she was either picking Raven or RWBY, but really she kind of picked both of them. So it was, that was the only choice that she had, to go to Raven to get to RWBY. It's Die or Believe could reference having faith in Ozpin, since this was questioned during the volume. Not Backing Down, We're Standing at Last. Defeat and Dejected are things of the past. This is all pretty general and could just be referenced to the volume pretty generally. This is the moment, this is the day, this is the place, and we came here to slay. Seems pretty reminiscent of, this will be the day that this will be the day we waited for, you know. Sorry, that wasn't my best. Yes, I'm a girl, but I'm also a gun is probably talking about Yang and her arm extension. That's a weird little line, but I like it. That's it, I'm deadly, you'll never outrun could be a reference to a couple things. So I see it as Yang running past Emerald and Mercury and they couldn't seem to grab her. That may be looking too much into it, but I think that a better sort of line is either talking about Cinder coming after them, like they'll never outrun Cinder and the bad guys, or it could mean Raven, that like Raven ran away from Yang in the past and abandoned her, but she can't outrun Yang anymore because she's all grown up. Since like the gun thing seems to be a reference to Yang, I want to say that the second line is also a reference to Yang, because it would be weird to just switch to the villains all of a sudden, if that makes sense. So because the arm extension, or the gun line, or whatever you want to call it, is about Yang, I'm guessing that the outrun part is also about Raven, that Raven can't keep running away, and whatever. Strike down my friends, I'll never bend, right to the end I'm fighting glorified. So this seems pretty general as well, but when I read it, I first thought about John, actually, and how he wouldn't sort of bend to Cinder, so to speak. And he basically, like, didn't care if he died, he'd fight till the end. And I feel like glorified could be a reference to the fact that he wants to go down as a hero, because obviously, you know, it's about glory. This actually reminds me of Hamilton, because Washington is like, when I was younger than you are now, when I was young and dreamed of glory, we had no control who lives, who dies, who tells our story. Hamilton's a musical, if you guys don't know. And so it's that sort of, like, glory of the battle. And though it's unpredictable, we're heading for the pinnacle, we'll never stop, we're headed towards the sky. This is pretty self-explanatory as well, and the course just repeats again. I think the sky and the sun metaphor is supposed to be about, like, the light and whatnot. So this is where things actually get really interesting, and I'm glad. And so I'll just read it to you and then we'll talk about it. It's not destiny. It would be a great mistake to think so. Every choice is ours and ours alone. This doesn't open up like fate. This is the future we create, and we're powered by every tear that's dry. So I think that this is a reference to Pyrrha's "Do you believe in destiny?" And this may be the answer. Like, this may be Cinder answering her, because the music does sort of change here, kind of like, it gives a shift, and so it could be like a quote-unquote character shift, right? So whether it's Cinder answering her or someone else, I think think this is really interesting, because if Pyrrha's like, do you believe in destiny? Cinder's saying, no, it's not destiny, and it was a mistake to think so, and that mistake obviously cost Pyrrha her life. And because Cinder is supposed to have the Relic of Choice, which you couldn't get access to at Beacon, it kind of makes sense that this would be your answer to Pyrrha. That, like, she does believe in, like, her choices and not fate or anything like that. Not in, like, fated by the gods, some people say, right? The tears drying thing, though, doesn't seem to it doesn't really work with Cinder, and so I would take that as more of a reference to Juniper, again, crying over Pyrrha. Right? The chorus repeats, and it ends again. And that is basically all I got. This is obviously pretty extensive and a little ridiculous. Like, some of the interpretations may be reaching a little bit too far, but at the same time, I think that even if we're looking too deep compared to maybe what was intended, I think that to an extent, like, the art only has meaning if you give it one, and this is kind of what the song means to me in the context of the show, looking at the volume. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you guys want to support us, you can check out our Patreon. And if you guys kind of have your own thoughts on some of the lyrics, I will reply to you guys and we can have, like, a super fun conversation about this, because this is really, I'm so in my element right now. Like, I don't know if you guys watched our reaction to all of the songs, but this is, like, this is my thing, you know what I mean? And so I'm so happy that I get to do this with you guys, but I'll see you later. Bye, guys.